The day Adrian disappeared, I was laughing over brunch with my mother. That's the part that haunts me most, how ordinary everything felt right before my world imploded. I remember checking my phone between mimosas, sending him a quick text, grabbing lunch with Mom, back by 3, love you. No response. I didn't think anything of it. When I got home, the apartment was too quiet. Not the peaceful silence of an empty space, but the hollow echo of abandonment. Something was wrong. I felt it instantly. Adrian, I called out, keys still dangling from my fingers. Nothing. I walked through our apartment, this space we'd shared for nearly 3 years, and started noticing the absences. His favorite coffee mug no longer on the drying rack. The stack of medical journals missing from the side table. His running shoes gone from their spot by the door. By the time I reached our bedroom, my heart was hammering. His side of the closet was empty. Not messy, not ransacked. Methodically emptied. Hangers evenly spaced where his clothes had been. The dresser drawers that held his things pulled out slightly, completely bare inside. His toothbrush, razor, cologne, all gone from the bathroom. I sat on the edge of our bed, my bed now apparently, and tried to make sense of what I was seeing. This wasn't an impulsive exit. This was calculated, planned, executed with surgical precision. It took me 3 more minutes to notice his keys on the nightstand, apartment and mailbox, placed beside a folded piece of paper with my name, Bella, written in his neat handwriting. Just my name, nothing else. I unfolded it with trembling fingers, expecting an explanation, a goodbye, anything. Inside was a single photograph. My stomach dropped as I recognized it immediately. Me leaving the Hilton downtown 2 weeks earlier, hand intertwined with Caleb's, my coworker, my mistake, my secret. My head was tilted back in laughter as we walked to his car. That was it. No words, no accusations, just irrefutable evidence and total silence. Adrian had seen everything, and instead of confrontation, he'd chosen complete erasure. I lunged for my phone, called him, straight to voicemail, texted, "Adrian, please talk to me. I can explain." The message showed as delivered but not read. I tried again, and again. Nothing. By midnight, I discovered I was blocked on every platform. Instagram, Facebook, even his email bounced back my desperate messages. It was as if a trap door had opened beneath our 4-year relationship, and he dropped through it without a sound. As I paced our half-empty apartment, I kept thinking, who does this? Who just disappears without a single word? I deserved a chance to explain, didn't I? I deserved at least the dignity of a confrontation, but deep down, a voice whispered, and what did Adrian deserve? I'd never thought of myself as a cheater. Even now, months later, I struggle to reconcile the person I believed I was with the choices I made. There's this version of myself I'd constructed, loyal, honest, good, that doesn't align with what I did to someone I genuinely loved. The affair with Caleb wasn't planned. Isn't that what everyone says? It started innocently. Late nights preparing for a massive client presentation, takeout dinners in conference rooms, commiserating over impossible deadlines. He was new to the company, ambitious, attentive in ways Adrian had stopped being. That's how I justified it to myself anyway. Adrian and I had settled into comfortable routines. He was finishing his residency, working 80-hour weeks at the hospital, coming home exhausted, sometimes not coming home at all. When he was there, he was often distracted, his mind still with his patients. I told myself I was lonely, neglected. The first kiss with Caleb happened after we landed the Peterson account. The office had cleared out for the night. We'd stayed to celebrate with a bottle of champagne our boss had left. It felt separate from my real life somehow, this parallel universe where I was someone else, someone exciting and desired. One kiss became a month-long affair. Hotel rooms during lunch breaks, fabricated work events in the evenings. Careful, I thought. So careful, deleting texts, using cash, keeping separate accounts. I never considered ending things with Adrian. That's the part I can't explain to anyone, not even myself. I loved him, truly, deeply loved him, even while betraying him. I compartmentalized so completely that I could leave Caleb's bed and go home to make dinner with Adrian, to plan our future, to sleep beside him without drowning in guilt, until that photograph shattered everything. He's gone, I told my sister Ellie on the phone the next day, my voice hollow, moved out while I was with Mom. Everything's gone. What do you mean gone, like he broke up with you? He left a picture, I whispered, unable to say it aloud, of me and Caleb. The silence on the line was deafening. Oh, Bella, her voice dropped. Not angry yet, just disappointed. The worst emotion. What did you do? I messed up. The tears came then, hot and relentless. But he won't even talk to me. He blocked me everywhere. His friends won't tell me anything. It's like he's dead. Can you blame him? Ellie's voice hardened. You cheated on him and now you're mad he won't stick around to hear your excuses? I'm not making excuses, I said, though that's exactly what I wanted to do. I just need to explain, to apologize. I deserve at least a conversation. No, Bella, you don't. The gentleness was gone from Ellie's voice. You don't get to decide what you deserve anymore. That's when I realized that Adrian wouldn't be the only loss in this fallout. My own sister was already choosing sides. The first week after he vanished, I existed in a state of frantic desperation. I called hospitals, convinced he'd been in an accident. I contacted his workplace, only to learn he'd requested emergency personal leave. I even drove to his parents' house in Connecticut, where his mother answered the door with eyes like ice. He doesn't want to see you, she said, blocking the entrance. Respect that much, at least. Mrs. Castillo, please. I need 5 minutes. You had 4 years of minutes, Bella. You wasted them. She started to close the door, then paused. He trusted you completely, you know. That's who my son is. When he loves, he does it without reservation. And this is how you repaid that trust. I stood on their porch long after she closed the door, rain soaking through my jacket, wondering when exactly I'd become this person that everyone could dismiss so easily. By the second week, humiliation had settled in alongside the panic. Word was spreading. Friends were taking sides, most of them his. Our couple friends, people I'd known for years, stopped responding to my messages. Olivia, who'd been in our lives since college, actually came to the apartment to collect a painting she'd given us as a housewarming gift. It was meant for both of you, she said, when I questioned her. Since that's not the case anymore, have you seen him, I asked, desperate for any information. Is he okay? He's dealing with it. She wouldn't meet my eyes. And before you ask, no, I won't tell you where he's staying. Olivia, we've been friends for 10 years. And you've been my friend who cheated on someone I also care about. She took the painting, a vibrant street scene from her trip to Barcelona. Actions have consequences, Bella, even yours. Caleb distanced himself immediately, as I should have expected. This is getting complicated, he said the day after Adrian left. Maybe we should cool things for a while. Translation: now that there might be actual emotional fallout involved, I'm out. By the third week, I was unraveling. Sleepless nights, no appetite, constant crushing anxiety. I kept thinking if I could just talk to Adrian, explain how confused I'd been, how lonely, maybe he would, forgive me? Take me back. The fantasy crumbled as quickly as it formed. I'd seen his face in 100 expressions, laughing, thoughtful, passionate, exhausted after a 30-hour shift. But I had never seen it cold. I couldn't even imagine what his voice would sound like saying goodbye. And that was the cruelest part of his disappearance. He denied me the closure of an ending. There had been no shouting, no accusations, no tearful conversations where we tried to salvage something from the wreckage. He looked at the evidence of my betrayal and decided I deserved nothing more from him, not his anger, not his pain, certainly not a chance at redemption. He'd walked away with the calm certainty of someone who knew exactly what his boundaries were. and I was left screaming into the void he'd left behind. How could you not have seen this coming? My friend Zoe asked over coffee a month after Adrian vanished. She was one of the few people still speaking to me, but her patience was wearing thin. He literally told you this would happen. What are you talking about? Remember when his friend Ben's wife cheated? 2 years ago? Adrian said he could never understand taking someone back after that kind of betrayal. He said it wouldn't even be a question for him. I had a vague recollection of the conversation. We'd been at a dinner party. Someone mentioned the scandal. And Adrian had quietly said he believed infidelity was the one unforgivable breach of trust. I'd nodded along, secure in the knowledge that I would never do something like that. That we were different, better. He didn't mean it, I protested weakly. People say things like that, but when it actually happens. Apparently, he meant every word. Zoe stirred her latte. That's the thing about Adrian. He doesn't say things he doesn't mean. She was right. It was one of the qualities I'd loved most about him, his thoughtfulness, his certainty. He weighed his words carefully. He made promises sparingly and kept everyone. When he said, "I love you" for the first time, after 6 months together, I knew he'd considered the full weight of those words, just as he'd considered the full weight of his silence now. 2 months after Adrian left, I ran into his colleague Whitney at the grocery store. I'd met her several times at hospital functions, always found her warm and unassuming. She froze when she saw me by the produce section, clearly contemplating an escape route. Whitney, I approached before she could get away. "How are you?" "Fine," she said stiffly. "Just grabbing a few things." "How's work?" I asked, desperate to keep her talking. "How's everyone?" She knew what I was asking. "Everyone's fine, Bella. Is Adrian okay?" Something flickered across her face. Pity, maybe. "He's transferred to Boston Medical. Started last week." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "Boston? He moved to Boston?" "I'm sorry. I thought you knew." She wasn't sorry. No one was sorry for me anymore. "He didn't even say goodbye," I whispered, more to myself than to her. "I think that was rather the point," Whitney said, no longer bothering with politeness. She left me standing there, holding an avocado I'd never remember to use, trying to process that Adrian was now in another state, putting physical distance between us to match the emotional chasm. That night, I drank an entire bottle of wine alone in my apartment, and did what I'd been avoiding. I boxed up the remnants of him that still lingered. The books he'd left behind. A forgotten sweatshirt. The fancy coffee beans he preferred. As I worked, I kept encountering these small, devastating reminders. A ticket stub from a concert last summer tucked in a book. A birthday card he'd written that made me laugh through tears. A stray cufflink under the dresser. It felt like a second abandonment, removing these traces, but it also felt necessary. If he could cut me out of his life with such surgical precision, perhaps I needed to do the same. The next morning, hungover and hollow-eyed, I took the boxes to a storage unit across town. Not ready to discard them completely, not strong enough to keep them close, in limbo, like everything else. "You need to stop this," Ellie told me over the phone, 3 months in. The constant checking of his social media from fake accounts. The drive-bys of his old workplaces. It's becoming obsessive. "I'm not obsessive," I protested. "I just need to know he's okay." "No, you need to know he's suffering as much as you are," she said bluntly. "And it's killing you that he seems to be moving on just fine." That stung because it contained a grain of truth. I'd been clinging to the belief that Adrian must be as devastated as I was, that his silence was just a different manifestation of pain. But everything I'd managed to glean from mutual acquaintances and social media suggested otherwise. He'd taken the position in Boston, bought a condo near the hospital, joined a cycling club. Life continuing, reshaping itself around my absence. Meanwhile, I was suspended in amber, every aspect of my existence defined by his departure. I'd taken a leave of absence from work, unable to face Caleb daily or focus on anything beyond basic functioning. I'd lost weight, lost sleep, lost the ability to imagine any future beyond the next desperate attempt to make contact. I don't know how to stop, I admitted to Ellie, voice breaking. I don't know how to accept that it's over. It's been over for months, Bella. You're the only one still fighting a battle that ended the moment he found that photo. But how do I just let go? How do I live with what I did? Ellie sighed. You start by accepting that this isn't about you anymore. Adrian made his choice, and he has every right to it. The kindest thing you can do for both of you is respect that choice. And then what? Then you do the hard work of figuring out why you cheated on someone you claim to have loved, so you don't do it to the next person who trusts you. That night, I finally deleted the fake Instagram account I'd been using to check Adrian's profile. I deleted Caleb's number too, though we hadn't spoken in months. Small steps toward whatever came next. 4 months after Adrian disappeared, I started therapy. Not just to process the breakup, but to understand the choices that led to it. The first few sessions were mostly me crying and repeating variations of, "But I loved him, I really did," while my therapist Marion waited patiently for me to exhaust my self-pity. If we're going to make progress, she finally said during our 4th session, you need to stop casting yourself as the victim in this narrative. I'm not. Bella, she interrupted gently. Everything you've told me centers around how Adrian hurt you by leaving. How unfair it was that he didn't give you a chance to explain. How abandoned you feel. But that's not where this story starts, is it? I stared at the geometric pattern on her rug, unable to meet her eyes. It starts with your choice to betray someone's trust, she continued. Everything that followed, including Adrian's response, stems from that initial action. So I deserve all of this, my voice cracked. The complete exile from his life, from our friends. This isn't about what you deserve, Marion said. It's about understanding that other people get to set boundaries based on how you treat them. Adrian decided that infidelity was his boundary. He communicated that to you, albeit in a hypothetical context. And when you crossed that line, he enforced his boundary by leaving. Put that way, it sounded so clean, so rational, but the reality had been messy and devastating. I just don't understand how he could walk away so completely, without a word, if he ever really loved me. Perhaps the depth of his pain required that distance, Marion suggested. Not everyone processes betrayal through confrontation. Some people need absolute separation to heal. I'd never considered that his silence might have been self-protection rather than punishment. The thought was somehow both comforting and devastating. Comforting to think he had cared enough to be deeply hurt. Devastating to realize I'd caused pain so severe that he couldn't bear even a goodbye. I want to talk about something else, Marion said after a moment. You focused a lot on why Adrian left and how. I'd like to focus on why you made the choices that led to that moment. I told you I was lonely. He was working all the time. Those are circumstances, not motivations, she pointed out. Plenty of people feel lonely in relationships, but don't cheat. What made you vulnerable to crossing that line? I sat with the question, really considering it for perhaps the first time. I think I wanted to feel important to someone again, prioritized. And did Caleb make you feel that way? Temporarily, I admitted. But it was hollow, like junk food, satisfying in the moment but leaving you worse off after. Yet you continued the affair for weeks. I kept thinking I could control it, that what Adrian didn't know wouldn't hurt him. I closed my eyes, ashamed. I didn't want to lose what I had with him, but I also didn't want to give up how Caleb made me feel. You wanted everything on your terms. Yes, I whispered, the truth of it finally sinking in. I was selfish and entitled, and God, no wonder everyone thinks I deserve this. This isn't about deserving punishment, Bella, Marion said firmly. It's about understanding your actions so you can make different choices in the future. Different choices. The concept seems so simple and yet so elusive. Who would I be if I became someone who made different choices? Someone who didn't sabotage her own happiness? Someone worthy of the trust Adrian had once placed in me? For the first time since he'd vanished, I felt a flicker of something beyond grief and self-pity, a tentative curiosity about who I might become on the other side of all this pain. 6 months to the day after Adrian disappeared, I met Katie. I'd finally returned to work, though at a different firm. The complete professional implosion I'd feared hadn't materialized. Caleb had transferred to another department. Tongues had wagged briefly. Then corporate amnesia set in as newer, juicier scandals emerged. Still, I'd needed a fresh start, somewhere without the ghost of my mistakes haunting the break room. Katie was a client, a startup founder looking for marketing help. Smart, driven, with a quick laugh and zero tolerance for bullshit. We clicked professionally immediately. "Drinks after the presentation?" she suggested one evening. "I know a great wine bar nearby." The invitation startled me. I'd become so accustomed to isolation, to being the pariah, that the simple gesture of social inclusion felt foreign. Over glasses of Malbec, we talked business, then gradually shifted to personal territory. She mentioned a recent divorce. I hesitated, then offered. "I went through a difficult breakup last year." "Ah, the hazards of the heart," she said, raising her glass in a mock toast. "Want to talk about it?" "Not really," I answered reflexively. "Perfect response," she laughed. "Nothing worse than drinks ruined by excavating romantic rubble." But after another glass, I found myself wanting to tell someone who didn't already know, who might see me as I was now, rather than through the lens of my worst decisions. "I cheated on my partner," I said suddenly. "He found out and left without a word. Just vanished from my life completely." Katie's eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't recoil. "That's a hell of an exit strategy." "It destroyed me," I admitted. "But lately I've been thinking maybe it was the only way it could have ended, given who we both are." "And who are you?" she asked, curious rather than judgmental. The question caught me off guard. 6 months ago, I would have answered with superficial identifiers. Marketing executive, Adrian's girlfriend, daughter, sister, friend. Now those labels felt insufficient, some no longer applicable at all. "I'm someone learning to live with regret," I said finally. "Someone trying to understand why I hurt a person I genuinely loved. Someone hoping to be better." Katie nodded slowly. That's a more honest answer than most people could give. We finished our drinks and parted ways with plans to meet again, not as client and service provider, but as potential friends. It felt like a small but significant step toward whatever came next. A year after Adrian disappeared, I moved out of our apartment. It had taken that long to accept that those rooms would always echo with his absence, that no amount of new furniture or repainting could transform the space into something that belonged solely to me. My new place was smaller in a different neighborhood, with no memories embedded in its walls. As I unpacked boxes, still finding the occasional item of his hidden among my things, a pen, a book, a coffee mug, I thought about the measurement of time, how a year could feel both infinitely long and surprisingly brief. In some ways, I was still raw from Adrian's departure, still caught off guard by waves of grief that would hit unexpectedly. Hearing a song he loved in a store, seeing someone with his distinctive walk from behind, dreams where we were still together, still happy. But those moments were becoming less frequent, less debilitating. In therapy, I'd begun to understand the patterns that had led to my infidelity. My tendency to seek external validation when feeling insecure, my fear of confronting problems directly, my belief that I could control outcomes by controlling information. Understanding didn't excuse what I'd done, but it gave me tools to recognize these impulses before they translated into destructive actions. My relationship with Ellie had slowly repaired itself, though there remained a wariness between us that hadn't existed before. She'd been right about so many things, and I'd resented her for it. Now I valued her willingness to tell me difficult truths. "You seem better," she observed over dinner at my new place. "More present." "I think I am," I said, considering the assessment. "Not fully healed, but healing." "Have you heard anything about him?" she asked carefully. "We rarely mentioned Adrian directly anymore." "Whitney told me he's been made chief resident," I admitted, "and that he's seeing someone, a pediatric nurse. Does that bother you?" A year ago, even 6 months ago, the news would have devastated me, sent me spiraling into obsessive social media stalking and tearful midnight phone calls. Now it produced a dull ache, like pressing on a bruise that was finally beginning to fade. Yes, I said honestly, but not in the same way. I want him to be happy. I wish I hadn't been the one to hurt him so badly. You can't change the past, Bella. No, but I can learn from it. I poured more wine for both of us. I've been thinking about forgiveness lately. Has Adrian reached out? Ellie asked, surprised. No, not that kind of forgiveness. I shook my head. I mean forgiving myself, not for what I did to him. That's not mine to forgive. But for being someone who was capable of making those choices. For being flawed and selfish and afraid. That's remarkably self-aware. I smiled wryly. A year of therapy will do that. After Ellie left, I sat on my new balcony, watching the city lights flicker against the night sky. I thought about Adrian, wondering if he ever thought about me, if he'd found whatever peace or closure he needed. I hoped so. It seemed like the least I could wish for him. I thought about the person I'd been when we met, younger, more certain of my own goodness, unaware of my capacity for self-destruction. I thought about who I was becoming now, humbled, more honest with myself, acquainted with my darkest impulses, but not defined by them. The pain of Adrian's absence would always be there, I realized. A scar, rather than an open wound. A reminder of what happens when we treat love carelessly, when we take for granted the people who trust us most completely. But perhaps that wasn't entirely a bad thing. Perhaps some lessons need to be etched deeply to truly transform us. I took out my phone, scrolled to the folder where I'd saved my last photographs of Adrian, laughing at a friend's wedding, concentrated while making dinner, peaceful in sleep. I'd looked at these images obsessively in those first desperate months, searching for clues, for signs I should have seen that our relationship was vulnerable. Now I looked at them and saw simply a person I had loved, a person I had hurt, a person who had made the choice to protect himself in the only way he knew how. Goodbye, I whispered to the images, then deleted the folder. It wasn't closure, not really. There would always be unfinished sentences between us, questions without answers, but it was acceptance of what had happened, of his right to walk away, of my responsibility to carry this particular sorrow and learn from it. The night air was cool against my face, carrying the scent of someone's dinner cooking, a neighbor's music drifting from an open window, a dog barking in the distance. Life continuing as it always does, regardless of broken hearts and shattered certainties. I went inside, closed the balcony door behind me, and turned toward my new rooms, my new life, not unburdened by the past, but no longer anchored to it either. Moving forward, one step at a time, into whatever came next.